You think you know what it means to be a mother, but nothing could prepare me for this. They came in the dead of night, with papers, lies, and a plan that would destroy my life. I was a perfect mom, or so I thought. By the time I realized what was happening, my son was gone, hidden, watched, and the system smiled while doing it. In this video, you'll see how love, fear, and cruelty collided. You'll discover the shocking ways they tried to break me, the secrets they hid about my son, and the dark truth behind the system that claims to protect children. Some of the things you'll hear are too terrifying to believe. Some are too brutal to imagine. And some will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Stay with me until the end, because what happened to my son and to me will shock you, infuriate you, and stay with you long after the video ends. The night it all began was the kind of night that stays with you forever. It was not cold, nor was it unusually warm, but the air in my apartment felt heavy, thick, almost tangible, as if it were pressing down on me before anything had happened. I had just finished putting my dishes in the sink after making a late dinner for my son, Michael, when the phone rang. A low, insistent ring that sounded almost wrong, like it was too loud for the empty apartment. I paused, knife still in hand, listening. My apartment was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound, and yet that ring seemed to slice the silence in half. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. There was no one on the other end, only a faint static, and then a voice, calm but cold, almost rehearsed. "Open your door. Now." I froze. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice small and shaking. "You know why," the voice said, and the line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my heart pounding. My first thought was a prank. My second thought was terror. My son, Michael, slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that the world outside was shifting beneath our feet. I put the phone down and cautiously walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Two figures stood there. They wore dark, tailored suits that made them look official, but their eyes were unreadable behind reflective sunglasses. They held folders in their hands, papers, documents. I did not know what they were at that moment, but instinctively I knew it was not good. I opened the door slightly, just enough to speak. "Can I help you?" "We're from the Child Protective Services," one of them said, his voice firm, devoid of warmth. "You are required to hand over your child immediately." I laughed nervously, a sound I barely recognized as my own. I think you have the wrong address. My son is asleep. He's fine." "There's no mistakes have been made," the other said, interrupting me. "You have 20 minutes. After that, we will enter by force if necessary." I stumbled back, clutching the doorframe. 20 minutes? It was unreal. I looked back toward the bedroom where Michael slept, unaware of the storm about to strike. I wanted to scream, to call someone, to run, but I was frozen. The weight of their words pressed on me like a physical force. I spent the next 10 minutes pacing, trying to think, trying to find a loophole, something, anything. I called the local police station. They told me bluntly, "If Child Protective Services has come with documents, there is nothing we can do. Comply. Fight it later." Comply. The word echoed in my mind, cruel and absurd. Comply with what? Comply with having my child taken from me, perhaps forever, by strangers who had no real reason, no proof, Just paperwork and authority? Michael stirred in his sleep. I tiptoed into his room, knelt beside him, and brushed the hair from his forehead. "It's okay, sweetie," I whispered, though I did not believe it myself. "Mommy's right here. Everything's okay." The words felt hollow. I knew it was not okay. The two figures waited outside, silent and patient, like predators. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the walls, but I knew there was nowhere to hide. They had the law behind them. And at that moment, I realized that laws, which were meant to protect, could just as easily destroy. I opened the door again, this time more fully. "What proof do you have?" I demanded, my voice rising with a mix of fear and defiance. "You can't just take him without cause." One of them handed me a folder. I flipped through it, my hands trembling so violently that the papers nearly slipped. Complaints, anonymous letters, allegations that made no sense. Some came from neighbors who had never spoken to me, some from teachers who had not noticed anything, some from strangers. They claimed neglect, instability, and worst of all, danger. Danger to my own child. I looked at Michael, still half asleep, and felt my chest tighten. Danger? Danger to him? From me? My own heart screamed in disbelief. I was the one who fed him, who stayed up at night when he was sick, who read him stories until his eyes drooped in exhaustion. I was the one who loved him beyond measure. And yet here they were, taking him from me. I called my lawyer, who had handled minor custody issues before. She told me to stay calm, to document everything, to fight in court. But she also told me something that I will never forget. In these cases, the system always moves faster than the person. Prepare yourself. Prepare myself. Prepare myself for what? To watch my child disappear? To know that the very people who promised to protect were now the agents of loss? By the time the sun began to rise, Michael was gone. I held nothing but a small blanket he had left behind, still warm from his body. I did not cry immediately. I just sat there, staring at the empty bedroom, listening to the echoes of a life that no longer existed. The days that followed were a blur. Every phone call, every email, every court date felt like walking through fog. I learned quickly that the system had no interest in explanations, in context, in the truth. It had procedures, forms, and boxes to check, and if I did not fit neatly into the categories they had predetermined, I was already failing. I started keeping a journal, detailing every interaction, every call, every scrap of evidence I could find. I recorded notes from neighbors who would speak on my behalf, teachers who knew my dedication, friends who could attest to the home I had built. But the more I tried, the more I realized that these things were small shields against a hurricane. And yet, there was one thing I could not relinquish, one thing that no law or paperwork could touch. The memory of his laughter, his tiny hands gripping mine, the way he called me Mommy with complete trust. That memory became both my anchor and my weapon. It was during one of these long, sleepless nights that I discovered something strange. In reviewing the documents they had left, I noticed inconsistencies, dates that did not add up, signatures that seemed forged. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, and for the first time, a flicker of hope ignited within me. If there was a crack in their armor, maybe, just maybe, I could use it. I did not know how yet, but I knew one thing. I would not stop. Not for the fear, not for the pain, not for the endless walls of bureaucracy. My son had been taken from me, but I was still his mother, and as long as I breathed, I would fight. And then, one evening, a call came that would change everything. A voice I did not recognize spoke, almost a whisper, almost a threat. "We are watching. One wrong move, and you will never see him again. But play by the rules, follow the path, and you may yet find him." I hung up, heart racing, mind spinning. They were watching. They had been watching from the moment they arrived, but now it was explicit. Every move I made, every document I touched, every word I spoke was being monitored. I realized then that this was not just a custody battle. This was a game. A cruel, orchestrated game in which I had no rules, no guide, and no guarantee of winning. And yet, I was ready. I would fight. For Michael. For the life we had lost. And I would uncover the truth no matter how dark it was, no matter how dangerous it became. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale air, a mix that made the walls feel alive, oppressive, almost sentient. I had never been in a place like this before. The seats stretched endlessly, filled with people whose faces were either neutral or expectant, none sympathetic. At the front sat the judge, a tall woman with a piercing gaze that seemed to look through you rather than at you. I had prepared for this day for weeks, gathering evidence, lining up witnesses, rehearsing my words. And yet, as I stepped inside, an icy wave of doubt and fear washed over me. Michael sat quietly at the back with a court-appointed guardian, his small hand clutching a stuffed rabbit that had become his lifeline in these last, unbearable weeks. His eyes met mine briefly, and he tried to smile. I wanted to run to him, to scoop him into my arms and never let go. But the law does not move on wishes or love. The law moves on paper, procedure, and the rigid hierarchies that govern it. The proceedings began with the reading of allegations. Each word struck like a hammer, echoing in my chest. Neglect, instability, emotional endangerment. I listened, numb, as the claims became a litany, each one more absurd than the last. Someone had accused me of leaving Michael alone for 10 minutes while I ran to the mailbox. Another claim alleged emotional neglect because I refused to enroll him in a program I deemed unnecessary. Every accusation was minor in isolation, but together they formed an unbreakable chain that the system claimed justified removing him. I stood to speak, my hands trembling as I held the folder of evidence I had painstakingly compiled. "Your Honor," I began, my voice shaky but firm, "these allegations are false. I have proof of my care, my devotion, my presence in my son's life every single day." The judge did not flinch, did not look impressed. "Your testimony will be noted," she said curtly. "Proceed with your witnesses." One by one, my friends, neighbors, and Michael's teachers spoke on my behalf. They described a mother who loved her child fiercely, who ensured he was healthy, educated, and happy. I listened, clinging to every word, feeling a fragile hope that reason might prevail. But hope is dangerous in a room like this. The opposing counsel had answers prepared, subtle attacks, implications, questions designed to sow doubt, not truth. "You say you were present at all times," one lawyer sneered. "Yet these documents indicate gaps in supervision. Can you explain why these gaps exist?" I explained, gave timelines, produced receipts, text messages, photographs, evidence of care. The lawyers smiled thinly and moved on. The pattern was clear. My life, my devotion, my love, all weighed less than the cold, impersonal logic of bureaucracy. After hours that felt like days, the court recessed. I sat alone, staring at the floor, unable to speak, barely able to breathe. Michael's small hand touched mine through the guard's presence. I squeezed back, trying to communicate everything words could not. Love, hope, resistance. But his presence was guarded, mediated, controlled. He was mine, yet not mine. The cruelest part of this ordeal was not the separation itself, but the fact that I could see him and yet could not protect him. In the hallway, I overheard whispers. "She's fighting too hard. The system will win. She does not understand how this works. Best case scenario, she sees him every other weekend." Each comment was a reminder that the world was against me, that my love, no matter how pure, was irrelevant. That night I sat at my desk, poring over the files once more. I noticed small discrepancies, signatures that did not match official records, dates that conflicted with events. The cracks I had noticed weeks before were growing, and with each crack, a dangerous idea took hold. If I could expose these errors, perhaps I could turn the tide. Perhaps I could reclaim what was stolen from me. Days passed, each one filled with court sessions, meetings with lawyers, and sleepless nights imagining Michael alone, missing me, questioning why I was not there. Every night I dreamed of him being in danger, of being placed with strangers, of the worst possibilities. Fear became my constant companion, but so did determination. I realized that to fight for my child, then I would have to go deeper than anyone expected, beyond the polite procedures, beyond the formal rules. I would have to enter the shadows, where the system itself hid its mistakes. Then came the day of the final hearing. The courtroom was packed. Cameras were set up, the air thick with anticipation. I had prepared for every possible question, every possible accusation. I had memorized timelines, cross-referenced documents, and rehearsed my speech until my voice could carry conviction even in my fear. Yet as I stepped up to speak, I felt the familiar surge of doubt. What if it was not enough? What if my son would be taken forever, no matter how strong I stood? The judge listened impassively as the final arguments were made. The opposing counsel emphasized my supposed failures, questioned my intentions, implied that love alone was insufficient. I spoke last. "Your Honor," I said, my voice trembling but resolute, "I am the mother of this child. I have loved him every day of his life. I have cared for him, nurtured him, and protected him to the best of my ability. To take him from me is not justice. It is cruelty. It is punishment for existing as a devoted parent." A silence followed that seemed to stretch forever. I looked at Michael, his eyes wide and hopeful, and I thought I could feel his small heart beating in unison with mine. And then the verdict came.
"We have considered all evidence," the judge said slowly, deliberately. "The child will remain in protective custody, to be placed with a foster family deemed appropriate by this court."
The words struck me like a physical blow. I could not cry. I could not move. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from the weight of injustice. Michael was led away, his small hand slipping from mine, and I watched, helpless, as the very fabric of my world unraveled. In the days that followed, I was consumed by rage and despair. I filed motions, sought advice, and dug deeper into the records. It became clear that the system had orchestrated everything: the complaints, the inspections, the documentation. Someone had decided I was unfit, and no amount of proof could alter that decision unless I could expose the machinery itself. Then came the first hint of something darker. One of the foster care workers called me privately. "You need to be careful," she said, her voice low. "This is not just about the law. Some people want to see you broken. They are watching every move you make." Watching. That word chilled me. It was not just bureaucracy. It was control. And I realized that reclaiming Michael would not be about reason or law alone. It would require cunning, patience, and perhaps a willingness to step into shadows I had never imagined. As I lay awake that night, Michael's absence a hollow ache in my chest, I understood the truth that would guide me forward. The system did not care about innocence, love, or truth. It cared only for compliance. And if I wanted my son back, I would have to defy it in ways I had never considered. The weeks that followed the verdict were the darkest of my life. Michael was gone from my daily world, but he haunted every corner of it. I walked through our apartment, now empty and echoing, and imagined him sitting at the kitchen table, his small hands clutching a cereal bowl, humming a tune only he could sing. That image both comforted and tormented me. I realized that what they had taken was not only a child, they had taken a part of my very soul. Yet despair became a sharp edge that cut into resolve. I could not accept the system's decision as final. I started poring over every document, every note, every correspondence related to the case. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, patterns began to emerge. Signatures that did not match, dates that overlapped impossibly, witnesses whose testimonies had been altered or erased. Someone had orchestrated every step of the process to ensure that I appeared unfit, no matter the truth of my life or love for Michael. One night, while reviewing files in my dimly lit apartment, I received a message on a burner phone I did not recognize. It was a single line. "They're hiding him. Not in foster care. Look deeper." My hands shook as I read it. My mind raced. Could this be true? Could Michael actually still be near me, hidden in plain sight, while the world pretended he was elsewhere? The thought was terrifying and strangely hopeful. I followed the thread. I contacted former social workers who had quietly expressed doubts about the process. I combed through surveillance logs, building records, and addresses connected to the case. Each lead took me deeper into a web of deception I had never imagined existed. The deeper I went, the more I understood that this was not a simple bureaucracy. It was a system built to obscure its own mistakes, protect itself from accountability, and manipulate those who dared challenge it. Then I found it. A series of emails, hidden behind layers of digital security that revealed the truth. Michael had never been placed in foster care. He had been moved to a so-called temporary safe home, under surveillance, a place where the system could control every aspect of his life. My son had been alive, nearby, and I had been made to watch from afar, powerless, believing he was elsewhere. Rage and disbelief collided within me. I realized the cruelty was deliberate. It was not about protection. It was about control, about asserting the system's power over a mother who dared to love her child fiercely. I had to see him. I had to find him. Every instinct screamed at me to act carefully, but the thought of waiting, of letting them manipulate the situation further, was unbearable. I traced the location to a suburban house that appeared ordinary but was heavily monitored. Security cameras, reinforced doors, and what looked like a professional surveillance team patrolling the property. I spent days watching from a distance, noting the comings and goings, memorizing patrol routes, and planning my approach. The fear was constant: fear of being caught, fear of losing him forever, fear of what I might do if I succeeded. But the love that bound me to Michael was stronger than any fear. Finally, the night arrived. The air was cold, biting, and my breath formed clouds as I crouched in the shadows across the street. I watched him through a partially open window. Michael, asleep on a small bed, clutching the same stuffed rabbit he had held the night they first came for him. Relief and agony washed through me simultaneously. He was alive. He was here. And yet, the walls between us felt insurmountable. I waited for the patrol to shift, for the chance to move, to reach him. Hours passed. My hands were raw from holding the tools I had brought, my mind calculating every step, every risk. And then, in the early hours, a figure moved outside, patrolling. I froze, blending with the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum of war. The figure passed. I moved. Breaking into that house was easier than I expected, and far harder emotionally. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind, imagining the relief, the joy, the reunion. But when I saw him, awake, frightened, eyes wide with confusion and fear, all rehearsed triumph vanished. Michael screamed, and I had to restrain myself from letting my own panic take over. I whispered, "Mommy's here. It's okay. I've come for you." His small hands gripped mine, trusting, desperate. And in that instant, every ounce of fear and preparation crystallized into a single purpose: get him out. I moved quickly, carefully. But then the unthinkable happened. The alarm triggered, not an ordinary one, but a silent alert to the system, a hidden signal I had never anticipated. Lights flashed, doors locked automatically, and I realized we were trapped. My heart froze as I watched figures in uniforms appear from shadows, professional, efficient, and unyielding. My son clung to me, and I could see the terror in his eyes mirrored my own. I screamed, but no one heard me. One of them stepped forward, hand extended, voice low and deliberate. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. Step aside, and no harm comes to the child." I wanted to strike, to push, to run, but logic, fear, and love collided in a paralyzing vortex. I realized that if I moved rashly, Michael would pay the price. And yet, the system that had taken him from me once before had no interest in fairness or reason. It existed only to enforce its own rules. Then, in a moment of desperation, I did something I could never have predicted. I spoke the truth aloud, loudly, for the first time in weeks. "He is my son. You have taken him unlawfully. Every document you claim is proof is forged. You cannot control love or justice." The room fell silent, as if the walls themselves were shocked by the audacity of my words. The figures hesitated, and in that hesitation, I felt a strange shift, a crack in their unyielding authority. They looked at each other, a subtle exchange that I could not read, and then, almost impossibly, they stepped back. One said, "This is not over, but for now, you may leave with him." I could hardly believe it. I clutched Michael, pressed him against me, and ran. Out into the cold night, into the dark streets, away from the shadows that had imprisoned him. Every step felt surreal, every breath like stolen air. I had him. He was mine, alive, trembling, but mine. We did not speak much as we ran. The silence was filled with relief, fear, and disbelief. When we finally reached a safe place, away from cameras and surveillance, I held him close, letting the tears fall freely. "I'm here, Michael. I've got you. You're safe now." He clung to me, whispering, "Mommy, I was so scared." "I know, baby," I said, my voice breaking. "I know." But even in that moment of reunion, the shadows lingered. The system that had orchestrated our separation had not disappeared. It was out there, still watching, still calculating. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that our freedom was temporary, fragile, a reprieve in a war that was far from over. As I held my son, I realized the truth about love, fear, and power. The system could take many things from us: freedom, peace, certainty. It could manipulate, deceive, control. But it could never take what was real, what was human, the bond between a mother and her child. That bond, no matter how cruelly tested, had endured. And yet, as I looked out the window at the quiet street, I understood something darker. The fight was not over. The system would not forgive, would not forget. They would come again. And next time, the cost might be higher, the stakes unbearable. But for now, I had my son. And in that precarious victory, I understood the full weight of what had been stolen and reclaimed. I had confronted a machine of cruelty, walked through fear, and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. I would survive. I would protect him. And I would never forget what the world was capable of, nor what a mother was capable of in return.